It was tall and skinny. Once it had been carried through the doors between the porch and the living room, it sat almost wedged between the floor and the ceiling. It had a lovely face and delicate hands. In a way, it looked almost human and not a piece of furniture. The word beautiful came to Mary's mind. Her parents called it a grandfather's clock, but her grandparents had not owned it as far as she knew. It had come to them from an aunt of her dad's who had died recently and willed the clock to them. Mary's parents were quite excited about it. Something about its being 200 years old and in the family for a long time and other stuff. Grown-ups seemed to think old things were really cool. Mary couldn't quite figure out why things were cooler than brand new things, but whatever. The grandfather's clock was now in a place of honor, sitting against the wall and looking really big in their small house. The clock was made of dark wood with a long, narrow window in front. The window could be opened, and inside there was a kind of metal pole that hung down from somewhere near the top of the clock. You could touch the pole. It had a brass dish about the size of a small saucer attached to it at the very bottom end. Mary's parents called the pole thing a pendulum. When you pulled the pendulum to one side and let it go, it kept swinging back and forth, and the clock part up top made tick-tock noises. If it went long enough, you could see the hands on the face of the clock move. You also had to wind the clock with a key about once a week so the pendulum would go on swinging and the hands would go on moving. The hands, of course, told the time the old-fashioned way, not like the neat digital face they had on the other clocks. Mary guessed that the clock was pretty special to be working so well after 200 years of ticking and talking. She had a digital alarm clock that hadn't lasted a year before it broke.
Dad's grandfather clock always is running slower than the other clocks in the house.
I noticed that too, Mary. We have to move the hands ahead every day, but it always runs slow. The next day we have to do it again, and it never keeps good time. We looked for a button or a switch to make it go faster, but we can't find any.
The pendulum seems to make it go faster. How do we do that?
Maybe the dish on the bottom of the pendulum is too heavy. If it's too heavy, it could slow down the swing time. Or the pendulum swings too far from side to side. It takes too long to make a swing. Or it could make shorter swings. It would go faster.
Mary shared her problem with her teacher, Ms. Patel, the next day. It's a beautiful old clock.
It's a beautiful old clock.
But it doesn't keep good time.
But it doesn't keep good time.
So in a way, it's useless. Why don't you set the clock to go faster? Mary told her teacher, Ms. Patel, how she thought the long pole that came down from the top had something to do with how fast the clock goes, but they couldn't seem to make the pole change the speed.
That pole and the bob on the bottom is called a pendulum. They swing in regular patterns, but we have to know more about them in order to change how they move. Let's make some pendulums out of strings and washers. We can test these and see if we find ways to speed them up or slow them down. So, for a start, what parts of the pendulum can we change? And how can we find out if these parts is what making a difference in how fast they swing?
Later that week, after experimenting with the pendulums in class, Mary went home and fixed the clock. Now it keeps perfect time, but if it doesn't someday, Mary and her family know just how to fix it. It really is simple when you know how.